The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering across the marble floor. My mother-in-law's laughter echoed through the ballroom as she handed me a cheap bracelet in front of 200 guests. They called me a gold digger. They humiliated me publicly. But then my phone rang. And when my brother walked through those doors, their faces went white. They had no idea what was coming. You know that moment when you realize you've walked into a trap? When every instinct screams at you to run, but pride keeps your feet planted? I had that moment at my in-laws' anniversary party. And what happened next? Well, let me tell you, it was the most satisfying night of my entire life. Before I dive in, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you'll want to see how this story ends. And stay until the very end because the revenge, it's absolutely perfect. My name is Sailor, and 3 years ago, I made what my mother-in-law calls the worst mistake of Brandon Whitmore's life. I married him. Me, a girl who grew up in a tiny apartment, who worked 2 jobs to pay for college, who never owned anything designer in her life. And Brandon? He's the heir to Whitmore Enterprises, a luxury real estate empire worth hundreds of millions. When we met at a charity fundraiser where I was volunteering, I had no idea who he was. I just saw a kind man with warm eyes who actually listened when I talked about my students. I'm a teacher, by the way. 5th grade. Brandon said he fell in love with how passionate I was about helping kids. His mother, Madeline, would later say he fell in love with my strategic planning. Our wedding was small. A courthouse ceremony with my mom, a few friends, and Brandon's parents who showed up 20 minutes late with faces that looked like they'd swallowed vinegar. Madeline wore white to my wedding. Yes, really. That should have told me everything I needed to know. The next 3 years were a masterclass in subtle cruelty. Madeline never called me by my name. It was always dear or Brandon's wife, with just enough emphasis on the word wife to make it sound like an insult. Harrison, Brandon's father, simply pretended I didn't exist unless he needed to make a point about breeding or legacy. And Vanessa, Brandon's sister, she made it her personal mission to remind me daily that I didn't belong. Family dinners where they discussed people and places I'd never heard of, conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Christmas gifts that were clearly last-minute afterthoughts while Vanessa got jewelry and designer bags. The servants wouldn't even make eye contact with me because Madeline had made it clear I was beneath them. Brandon tried. He really did. But he was always traveling for work, and when he was home, he didn't want to believe his family was that cruel. "They just need time," he'd say. 3 years is a lot of time. Then came the invitation. Vanessa delivered it personally, which should have been my first clue. She showed up at our door in a navy blue designer dress, diamonds glittering at her throat, holding an embossed envelope like it was a summons to court. Mother and father's 40th anniversary, she announced, that practiced smile not reaching her eyes. It's going to be quite the event. 200 guests, the entire estate decorated, champagne flowing. I do hope you can find something appropriate to wear. Her eyes dragged down my simple clothes with obvious disdain. Something that won't embarrass the family. After she left, I stood there holding that heavy cardstock invitation, and I knew this wasn't an olive branch. This was a stage being set for my public humiliation. Brandon squeezed my hand and promised he'd stay by my side the entire night. I wanted to believe him. What Brandon didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had a brother, Jonathan. We were raised by our mom after Dad died, and John took care of us, put himself through college, built a career, made sure Mom and I never went without. He's successful now. Very successful. But he's also intensely private, and when I married Brandon, I asked him not to interfere. I wanted the Whitmores to accept me for me, not because of who my brother was. I called him 2 days before the party, just to talk. Just to hear a familiar voice that didn't judge me. "You doing okay, little sister?" he asked, and I lied and said yes. He didn't believe me. Jonathan always knew. The night of the party arrived. I wore a cream silk dress, simple, elegant, expensive in a quiet way. A friend who's a designer made it for me, but it didn't scream wealth. It whispered class. I did my own hair and makeup. Brandon wore his tuxedo and told me I looked beautiful. I held onto that compliment like a shield. The Whitmore estate was breathtaking and horrifying all at once. The circular driveway was packed with luxury cars, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Maseratis, each one worth more than I'd make in 5 years of teaching. Valets in crisp uniforms jogged between vehicles. The mansion itself glowed with warm light from every window, and I could hear the string quartet playing before we even reached the entrance. Inside was worse. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my childhood home. Marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. Ice sculptures shaped like swans. Champagne towers that seemed to touch the ceiling. And everywhere were people dripping in diamonds and designer labels, their eyes sharp and assessing. The whispers started immediately. I heard, "That's her," and "the gold digger," and "I can't believe she actually came." A woman in a glittering silver gown leaned to her companion and said loudly enough for me to hear, "I heard she was a waitress when they met." I wasn't, but the truth didn't matter to these people. Vanessa appeared like a beautiful shark, her navy gown catching the light, her smile all teeth. "Oh, sailor, you made it. How quaint. Is that from a department store?" She knew it wasn't, but the damage was done. The women around us tittered into their champagne glasses. Then came dinner. The grand ballroom was set up with one long imperial table, every place setting probably worth more than my monthly salary. Name cards in gold calligraphy marked each seat. I watched Madeline's friends find their places near the head of the table, closest to the anniversary couple. I watched Vanessa sit in a position of honor. My card was near the kitchen doors. Near the end, where distant cousins and business acquaintances no one really cared about were seated. Brandon's card was at the head table between his parents. "There must be a mistake," Brandon said, his voice tight. Madeline appeared, resplendent in a champagne-colored gown dripping with pearls. "No mistake, darling." There's a hierarchy to these things. Sailor understands, don't you, dear? She didn't wait for an answer. She should just be grateful she's here at all. Harrison joined her, his hand on Brandon's shoulder. "Son, this is how these events work. Your wife can certainly handle one dinner away from you, unless she's not as independent as she claims to be." Brandon looked at me, torn. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Stay with me and cause a scene, or obey his parents and leave me isolated. I made the choice for him. "It's fine," I lied. "I'll be okay." But I wasn't okay. The people at my end of the table barely spoke to me. The servers somehow skipped me multiple times, having to be flagged down. Water glasses were refilled all around me while mine sat empty. It was deliberate. All of it. Then Madeline stood to give her toast. The room fell silent, champagne glasses raised. She started sweetly, thanking everyone for coming, talking about 40 years of marriage and legacy and family values. Her voice was warm honey, her smile practiced perfection. "We've always valued certain qualities in this family," she continued, her eyes finding me across the room. "Breeding, education, class, the kind of foundation that takes generations to build." She paused, letting the words sink in. Then Brandon brought home a surprise. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Uncomfortable knowing laughter. Vanessa stood up, raising her own glass. "We thought it was a phase, didn't we, Mother? A rebellion. Rich boys do sometimes slum it." More laughter, louder now. Harrison rose, his voice booming across the ballroom. "Let's be honest, since we're all family and friends here." We all wondered about her motives. "It's only natural." He gestured to someone, and suddenly a screen behind them lit up with a slideshow. Pictures of Brandon's ex-girlfriends flashed across the screen. Beautiful women in designer clothes, posing at charity galas and yacht clubs. Each one had a caption: Georgetown graduate, Vanderbilt legacy, Manhattan Society. Then my picture appeared, a simple photo from my teacher ID, surrounded by question marks. The caption read, "One of these things is not like the others." The room erupted in laughter, mean cutting laughter that echoed off the marble and crystal. I felt my face burn, felt tears prick at my eyes. Brandon stood up so fast his chair fell backward, but Harrison held up a hand. "Sit down, son." "We're not finished." Madeline pulled out 2 jewelry boxes. She opened the first with ceremony, revealing a stunning diamond necklace, an heirloom, clearly. "For Vanessa," she announced, fastening it around her daughter's neck. "For my daughter who understands the value of legacy and the importance of marrying well." Then she pulled out a second, smaller box. She walked it down to my end of the table personally, her heels clicking on the marble. She placed it in front of me like a dare. Inside was a cheap bracelet, the kind you'd find at a mall kiosk, maybe $50. "For you, dear," Madeline said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Something more, your level." Vanessa's voice carried across the room. "At least she can't pawn the real jewelry this way." Then the accusations started flying like knives. Different voices, different angles, all designed to cut. "How much research did you do on Brandon's net worth before you started dating him? Did you get pregnant to trap him? Is that why he married so quickly? Your mother must be so proud. Marrying up is quite the accomplishment for people like you." Brandon tried to stand again, tried to defend me, but Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Sit down, or you're out of the will. Tonight, I'll call the lawyers right now. Choose, your inheritance or this girl." I watched Brandon freeze, watched him sink slowly back into his chair, and something inside me shattered, not because of the money, because even now, even after 3 years, he couldn't fully choose me. I stood up. My hands were shaking, tears streaming down my face, but I stood up. The room went quiet, waiting to see if I'd break completely, if I'd run crying, if I'd give them the show they wanted. "I've endured 3 years of your cruelty," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. 3 years of trying to prove I'm worthy of a family that doesn't understand the meaning of the word. I loved Brandon. I never wanted his money. I wanted what I never had growing up, a big family, holiday dinners, people who cared. But you'll never believe that because you've never loved anything more than your bank accounts. I grabbed my purse, that cheap bracelet still sitting in its box on the table. Vanessa's voice followed me. "Run away, just like your kind always does when things get hard." Madeline actually laughed. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out, dear." Harrison addressed Brandon without even looking at me. "Let her go, son. You'll thank us for this later. She would have bled you dry eventually." I walked toward the exit, every eye on me, every whisper a knife in my back. But before I reached the door, I pulled out my phone. My hands were steadier now. I dialed a number I'd been avoiding calling. Jonathan answered on the first ring. "Sailor? What's wrong?" "I'm ready," I whispered. "Come now." 15 minutes passed. 15 minutes of me standing in the entrance hall, ignoring the servant who tried to get me to leave, ignoring the looks from guests who wandered out to see the show. Inside, I could hear the party continuing, the laughter, the music, the celebration of my humiliation. Then I heard it. Car engines, multiple expensive car engines, the kind that purr like predators. The butler rushed past me, his face flustered. He burst into the ballroom and I heard him announce, "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, there's a situation at the entrance." Through the windows I watched 3 sleek vehicles pull up, not just cars. A convoy. Security personnel in sharp suits emerged first, their movements coordinated and professional. Then the door of the center vehicle opened. Jonathan stepped out, and even from where I stood, I could see he was in full armor. Not the casual brother who called me on weekends. This was Jonathan Reed, billionaire venture capitalist, looking every inch the predator he'd become in the business world. Inside the ballroom, I heard chaos. Phones being pulled out, frantic Googling, whispers exploding into shocked conversations. "Is that Jonathan Reed? The Jonathan Reed! What is he doing here?" My brother walked through the entrance, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt safe. He saw me, tears on my face, and his jaw tightened. But his voice was gentle. Hello, little sister. Sorry I'm late. He kissed my forehead, then turned toward the ballroom. His smile never reached his eyes. Shall we? The scene we walked into was pandemonium barely controlled. Madeline's face had gone sheet white. Harrison was standing, his hand gripping his phone like a lifeline. Vanessa was staring at her screen, her mouth literally hanging open. Brandon looked confused, looking between me and Jonathan like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Jonathan walked me to the head table, his hand on my back, his presence commanding every eye in the room. The whispers were deafening. Please, Jonathan said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Don't let me interrupt this celebration. He picked up a champagne glass, examined it, set it down. Lovely party. I'm Jonathan Reed, Sailor's brother. Madeline tried to recover, her society training kicking in. Mr. Reed, what an unexpected surprise. We had no idea that Sailor was your— That Sailor was my sister? Jonathan's smile was ice. Yes, she asked me not to interfere with her marriage. She wanted to be accepted for who she is, not for who she's related to. I can see now how well that worked out. He picked up the cheap bracelet from my abandoned seat, turned it over in his hands. Interesting gift. Should I show you the investment portfolio I built for her birthday? It's worth approximately $47 million. But I suppose this bracelet is more her level. The room was dead silent now. You could have heard a pin drop on that expensive marble. Jonathan wasn't done. He addressed the room like he was giving a board presentation, calm and factual and absolutely devastating. Let me share some information since we're all family and friends here, he said, echoing Harrison's earlier words with surgical precision. My sister has a PhD in education from Columbia University. She paid for it herself, despite my offers to help. She turned down a position at a prestigious private school because she wanted to teach in public schools, where she felt she could make more of a difference. She volunteers every weekend at children's hospitals, reading to sick kids. She's never once mentioned any of this because she doesn't need validation from people who measure worth in dollar signs. He turned to Harrison specifically. Now let's talk about business. Because that's what really matters to you, isn't it, Harrison? Harrison's face went from white to gray. He knew what was coming. Whitmore Enterprises is failing, Jonathan said flatly. You've lost 3 major development deals this year. Your stock is dropping. Your investors are nervous. You're approximately 6 months from having to sell off assets just to keep the lights on. He paused, letting that sink in. You were counting on the $500 million investment from Reed Capital that we were planning to finalize next month. The emphasis on "were" echoed through the ballroom. That investment would have saved your company, expanded your empire, secured your family's legacy for another generation. Jonathan pulled out his phone, started making calls right there, speaker on so everyone could hear. Jennifer? It's Jonathan. Pull the Whitmore deal. Permanently. Yes, all of it. Reallocate those funds to the Chicago project. He hung up, dialed again. Marcus? I need you to launch a full investigation into Harrison Whitmore's business practices. Focus on the last 5 years. No stone unturned. Another call. Board meeting tomorrow morning. I'm voting against the merger. Make sure everyone knows. Harrison actually stumbled, grabbing the table for support. Please, Mr. Reed, let's discuss this privately. There's no need to— To what? To treat you with the same dignity you showed my sister? Jonathan's voice could have frozen hell. You had 3 years to have this conversation, 3 years to treat her with basic human respect. You chose humiliation instead. Madeline tried, her voice shaking. We didn't know she was your sister. If you had known she had a powerful brother, you would have treated her differently. Jonathan cut her off. That's exactly the problem, Madeline. She has value as a human being, regardless of who her family is, but you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Vanessa suddenly appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. Sailor, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any of it. We were just joking. You know how family teases? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but pity. Now you see me? Now I matter? Now that you know my brother could destroy everything you have with a phone call? She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Keep your apologies, Vanessa. They're as fake as every conversation we've ever had. Jonathan addressed the crowd one more time. Everyone here should know exactly who they're dealing with. The Whitmores humiliate people for sport. They measure human worth in bank accounts. They're cruel to those they perceive as beneath them. Is that who you want to do business with? Is that who you want to associate with? The guests started moving. Quietly at first, then in a rush. Making excuses, checking phones, suddenly remembering other obligations. Business cards were pocketed. Future deals discussed in corners suddenly evaporated. Harrison's potential investors backed toward exits. Madeline's social circle turned their backs, literally. I watched Vanessa's fiancé, a man I'd met twice who'd ignored me both times, walk up to her and hand back her ring. "I can't be associated with this," he said simply, and walked away. The servants who'd treated me like dirt suddenly looked at me with fear and respect, not because of me, because of the man standing next to me. Then Brandon finally found his voice. He stood up, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked at his parents with something like hatred. "I should have done this 3 years ago," he said, his voice carrying across the emptying ballroom. "You taught me that money equals worth. You taught me that breeding and legacy matter more than character. You were wrong about everything." He turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Sailor, I failed you. I chose my inheritance over my wife. I chose my comfort over your dignity. I'm sorry isn't enough, but I'm saying it anyway." To Jonathan, he said, "I don't deserve her. I know that now. But I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be better." Jonathan looked at him for a long moment. "You better be. Because if you're not, I'll make sure she never needs you or your family ever again. Are we clear?" Brandon nodded. Then he did something I never expected. He took off his Rolex, a gift from his father, removed his family signet ring, passed down through 4 generations, placed them both on the table. "I'm leaving with my wife. Tonight. For good." He looked at Harrison. "You said choose." "I'm choosing. Keep your inheritance, keep your legacy, keep your blood money. I don't need it. I don't want it." Harrison's face turned purple. "You'll have nothing. You'll be nobody." "I'll have my integrity," Brandon said. "That's more than you've ever had." We walked out together, me, Brandon, and Jonathan. Behind us, I heard Madeline's sobs, Harrison's curses, Vanessa's pleas. The beautiful party was in ruins. The carefully constructed illusion of the perfect family shattered like those champagne glasses. In the car, Jonathan held my hand. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" "Because I wanted to handle it myself. I wanted to prove I was strong enough." "You are strong enough, Sailor. That's why I came when you finally called. Not to rescue you, to back you up. There's a difference." 6 months later, the aftermath was complete. Whitmore Enterprises declared bankruptcy, sold off in pieces to competitors. Harrison and Madeline lost the estate, lost their social standing, lost everything they'd valued more than their own son's happiness. Vanessa got a job, a real job, not a vanity position, and had to live like the rest of us. They tried to reach out. Letters, phone calls, showing up at our new apartment. We ignored them all. Some apologies come too late. Brandon started a small construction company with his own hands and his own sweat. No family money, no connections, just hard work. We live in a modest home. We're happy, really truly happy. I still teach 5th grade. I still volunteer on weekends. But now I also run a foundation that helps kids from low-income families get access to education. Jonathan funds it, of course, but I run it. And every child we help is a reminder that worth isn't measured in dollars. Yesterday, I received another letter from Madeline. I didn't open it. I held it over a candle and watched it burn, watched all those desperate words turn to ash. Brandon asked if I felt guilty. I don't. They had 3 years to show me kindness. They chose cruelty. When the consequences came, they came from their own actions, not from my revenge. My brother taught me something important that night. Quiet strength is the most dangerous kind. The people who underestimate you, who mistake kindness for weakness, who think they can break you because you don't fight back immediately, those people never see it coming when the storm finally arrives. If you felt even a fraction of the satisfaction I did that night, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because we have more stories about karma, justice, and people who learned hard lessons. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done in my position? Would you have burned that letter? Or would you have opened it? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself, by the strength you show when no one's watching, by the dignity you maintain even when they're trying to strip it away. Thanks for watching, and remember, never let anyone make you feel small. The right people will see your worth. The wrong people? Let karma handle them. See you in the next story.